Okay, so this news broke pretty much as we were wrapping up recording last week, so we didn't make too much sense when we were talking about it because we were still learning things. But now we've had a full week to digest the Paco Lopez suspension. He was suspended for 6 months last week by HISA for a violation of basically his probation agreement that he signed after the national law incident last December at Parks, where he struck the horse in the face after the race for no reason. And John, I honestly am a little bit surprised at how much the wagons have been circled around Paco Lopez following this incident. Listen, and I want to start this off by saying I get why the jockeys and the Jockeys Guild are sensitive about the whip issue, because there have been a lot of crop violations and fines and suspensions since HISA came into being, obviously the most high profile of which was the Junior Alvarado massive fine for the Kentucky Derby. And I get why they think it's arbitrary, the 6-strike rule. And, you know, they're just trying to do their jobs. The whips have gotten so much more humane that it's not a big deal. They get a little sensitive, like when PETA starts making a fuss about this kind of thing. And I get why they have to stand together. And that's what unions do. You know, it's not about the individual actor. Like, you'll see police unions defend the bad cops too. And, you know, just reflexively, that's what their job is. So I totally get why John Velasquez and Mike Smith and all these guys are standing behind Paco, because they all feel kind of like they have a target on their back and they're under a microscope now. That being said, let's review what happened. Paco Lopez has been a menace on the racetrack for years and years. He has gotten suspended multiple times for careless riding. He almost killed Romero Mirage a couple of years ago. He caused a pile up in the Fountain of Youth last year. This has been a guy that people have been trying to get suspended for a lengthy amount of time for years, solely because of the danger that he puts his fellow riders in with his reckless riding. So that's the context, the first bit of context for the guy that we're now defending on this 6-month suspension. Let's go back to last December and the incident that I mentioned with national law. If we remember what happened, the horse was drifting out through the stretch. They crossed the wire. The horse had slowed to a walk. There was an outrider right there next to him, and Paco reaches back and smacks the horse across the face for no reason other than that he was frustrated and angry. Now, to me, that alone, considering his past, would have been grounds for a lifetime suspension. There are certain things in this game that should be absolutely unacceptable. And hitting a fucking horse in the face with a whip for no reason other than you're pissed off should be one of those things. So let's now spin it forward. He got a 2-year suspension initially for that incident. His suspension was reduced. I think it was to 50 days or 60 days, whatever it was. Yeah. It was significantly reduced. But the conditions of that reduction were that he would not have a litany of violations of any kind going forward. And he since had 10 different violations of the whip rule, 8 of which were not going over the 6-strike rule. They were reaching his hand above his helmet and smacking the shit out of a horse, which, as we all know, looks terrible to anybody, let alone a casual observer of racing. So, John, I got a lot more to say about this, but I don't want to take up all your time. I just think we have to remember the context, because I see like the quote from Drew Malika where he's like, well, basically like, well, he didn't smack another horse in the face, so he shouldn't be suspended for this length of time. Is that really the standard now? Because he didn't smack another horse in the face with a whip, he shouldn't have gotten a lengthy suspension, even considering his history? John, you can take it away.
Well, you know, there's a couple of things to unpack here, Joe, and I think you're right. You know, Paco Lopez has been a habitual offender. I mean, it's not a 1-off, it's not a 2-off, it's not an 8-off. I mean, over the years, he has been extremely aggressive with his riding tactics, and some would say borderline abusive with the use of the crop on his mounts. One of the reasons why, you know, even though he won graded stake races for us, we haven't used him since he's been suspended. He and his counsel, Drew Malika, they agreed to be on probation in exchange for a reduced sentence. The guy had a 2-year ban sitting in front of him. It got reduced to 60 days, in essence, that everyone agreed upon. And the deal was orchestrated, negotiated, and reviewed and recommended, you know, and ultimately agreed upon by Paco. And Joe, just like any other part of regulations or rules or the law, when you're on probation, which is what they plead and agreed to get the 2-year sentence down to 60 days, it means that you're likely going to be more scrutinized for any additional violations of any kind. And I know what Drew is saying when he says, quote, and this is from the TDN article, when he says, quote, the tenor of the agreement was that he would not comport himself with similar behavior to the national law incident, said Malika. The national law incident was about striking a horse in anger post-race. They're conflating issues to try and punish Paco. The tenor of the agreement, the plain language of the agreement, was that he would not breach the agreement, and he did not by committing minor whip violations that were all adjudicated by the stewards. He did not hit a horse in anger. Well, you know what, Drew? I mean, I like Drew. I think he's a good guy. We have, communicated back and forth on this, and I know he's protecting his client, but that's not the standard anymore. The standard, once you get on probation, again, I have not read the agreement. None of us have read the agreement because it's not public. But once you agree to be plead down and you're on probation, it basically means that the organization that is providing you this lesser sentence has the right to come in and give you back, the proper suspensions for the allegation, for the not even alleged, for the actual whip violations. And Joe, it wasn't a one-off, as you mentioned. It wasn't a two-off, as you said. Since March 4th, Paco has been sanctioned an additional 7 times by HISA. That's since March 4th, all of which were either raising the whip above the helmet, which is a $1,000 fine and a suspension at minimum, at Monmouth at least. At Saratoga, when he did it, it was a $1,000 fine and 3 days. At Colonial, when he did it, it was $500 and a 2-day suspension, which was appealed. At Monmouth, again, it was $400 and a 1-day suspension. It goes on and on and on. So again, it's not just at one racetrack where you'd say, well, the stewards are out to get him, or the jockey colony there is out to get him. This was at Monmouth, Saratoga, Colonial, and Parks. Those are the 4 racetracks that make up the 7 violations. And the thing that blows my mind also is that in the grand, when the jockeys come in and say, we feel like that these rules are draconian, my words, or unfair, I seem to remember that when these rules were all being put together, that jockeys were represented and consulted by HISA in creating the crop rules. So they had a say in it. Now, maybe they're not happy about it anymore because, they feel like they were coerced or forced to accept some rules, and that the rules were going to be in place anyway. So this is kind of the way it is. But it's strange to me that you would, rally around and make Paco Lopez the poster child for the reason that the jockey rules or the whip rules or crop rules are unfair. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And we can get into the other kind of what I would call nonsense that some of the jockeys went on to say, when they gave their plea as far as, kind of free Paco, because they were just that. They were hyperbole. It was like 50% of all these rules don't make sense, and blah, blah, blah. And all these jockeys have violations. So why are we picking on Paco? To me, it's like saying, hey, all of us speed when we're on the parkway or on the turnpike. Why am I getting singled out for speeding? Well, you know what? You violated the rule. And it doesn't matter who got caught. You violated the rule. And by you getting caught doesn't mean you can point to the other 8 jerks that passed you when you were going 80 miles an hour and they should have been caught. If you're violating a rule, then you have to be willing to be subject to the consequences. I have more to say, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, like the analogy here would be if you had 20 speeding tickets already,
right,
and 2 DUIs and a bunch of driving violations, and then you got caught for speeding, got your license taken away. You're complaining that it's the rules are unfair. Again, this was a part of a stipulation that stemmed from Paco Lopez reaching back and smacking a horse in the face with the whip after the race, after the horse had slowed to a walk with an outrider right there. Like, the jockeys do not mention that. Right? If they even reference it at all, they just say the incident in December because they don't want you to remember exactly what he did. Right. And I don't want to hear that, PETA got involved and PETA's making the rules now. I got a news for you. Peter would not even know Paco Lopez's name
Right.
if he didn't do that in December.
Right.
There are certain things, again, in this game that should be absolutely verboten. And he's lucky. I think he's lucky considering his entire history and his reputation and all the dangerous things that he's done that I remember at the time I was like, they really reduced the suspension to 60 days. Right. I was pissed off about that because there are certain things that you just absolutely cannot do. And abuse of a horse that blatant should be one of those things. So I again, like I get why they feel like they have to draw a line in the sand on the whip. And I think that that's what it's about. Like that, it's about the whip and the kind of loggerheads that the jockeys and HISA are at when it comes to the whip rule. And I get that. But this is like, what would have happened? Say like it wasn't the whip. Say he was involved in another reckless riding incident and they suspended him 6 months. Would there have been this kind of outrage about his suspension? I don't think so. I think it's them trying to make a stand on this one issue, and I understand why they're sensitive to it. But the bottom line is it's not about this. It's not just about this. This is about a guy who has been given chance after chance after chance after chance throughout his career to ride clean, ride safe, not violate the rules. And over and over and over and over again, he's proven that he cannot do it. He can't. He cannot follow the fucking rules. And he's done it for years and years and years. And the other thing too is I get why the jockeys are defensive of him. As I say, like, I don't think it's necessarily about Paco and about this incident. I think as a union, they're trying to back their guy and their fraternity and make a stand on the whip. I was stunned, honestly, to see all of the people on horse racing Twitter who were like suddenly huge Paco Lopez defenders and backers. These are the same fucking people who wanted his head on a pike after the pile up in the Fountain of Youth and all the incidents that he's caused over the years. And to me, that makes it seem like this is about HISA in certain circles, because there are so many people that I've seen that have been so critical of Paco Lopez and all of a sudden want to stick up for him. I think that there's a broad kind of anti-HISA sentiment across the industry. And I think that is why they're making Paco Lopez into a sympathetic figure after all of these years. And it just completely defies logic and defies belief. Like a cursory look at his history should have told you that he was one strike away from getting a significant suspension. And it's not even like he's banned for life. Right. Or for, like, this is, relatively speaking, this is not that big of a deal considering all of his rap sheet and all of the violations that he's had over the years. And I was just, honestly, I was stunned, John, at the reaction to this. And, especially from the people who aren't jockeys, the people who I've seen been critical of Paco over the years. And I just think at this point, like, any kind of excuse they can take to paint HISA as this, overbearing government bureaucratic agency that's out to punish regular people. They'll take it and they'll run with it. And to me, that's what I saw. And that's what was surprising about the past week.
Yeah, Joe, let me throw some numbers at you that HISA put out there in their press release. And oh, by the way, Lisa does do other interviews other than here at Real Talk, but we are appreciative that she comes on our show. Yeah.
All the people who say they hate our show anyway are complaining that Lisa only does our show. I thought you hate our show. Don't fucking watch.
I loved, this is a sidebar. I love the tweet that said that we're on the payroll of HISA. They must be sending the checks to the wrong address because I haven't gotten them yet. But anyway, I digress.
And I got a good accountant too.
Yeah, is it the Green Group? Is it 1 8? Had we morph into a commercial? I don't know. Anyway, so Joe, since the start of 2025, 712 jockeys have raced at HISA jurisdiction making racetracks for a total of, I'm going to round, 127,000 total starts. Okay, so out of 127,000 total starts, there have been 25 crop violations. 25. That's it. Out of 127,000 total starts. So the nonsense of the jockey saying we all have been fined and we've all been guilty of this and we're tired of it. That's nonsensical also. Of the 25 crop violations, how many of them do you think were Paco? This is from the beginning of the year.
I'd say probably at least 10.
So 8 of them. So a third of the violations, 1/3 of the violations are from one individual. Let's not even call him Paco Lopez. Let's call him Mr. Smith. So if Mr. Smith, take all the emotion out of it. If Mr. Smith represented 1/3 of the crop violations for the entire colony for the entire year and had no other rap sheet whatsoever, would you say that that person is a habitual violator of the rule and should be recognized and sanctioned for it? Because it sounds to me like that person hasn't learned that there are rules in place and that all the other jockeys are abiding by those rules. You know, the entire colony, except for a handful of people, one of which is Mr. Smith in this example, who represents 1/3 of the crop violations. It sounds like that if anything, they've been too lenient on Mr. Smith because he hadn't had any other violations. Now, let's say that Mr. Smith has other violations to go back to it, not even in anger, but just has other, habitual issues throughout the years of his career. On top of it, again, you say, guy's a slow learner, hasn't learned what the new rules are, even though they've been in place for a number of years. And by the way, the entire jockey colony, except for save a handful of people, understand the rules and abide by them. If anything, the other jockeys should be kicking themselves that this guy is getting away with this and that they have to abide by the rules and play fair. And they are given a disadvantage, in essence, by promoting the fact that Mr. Smith should be freed of all charges. So it just doesn't make sense. I know that Drew Malika is doing his job as an attorney, and he does a very good job of protecting and representing his clients. But there's no way that I can see this as being logical, that you would want to get behind this situation and this person to be the poster child for what's wrong. If you want to come in and say, hey, in light of everything that's going on with these jockeys, we want to come in and talk to you about what's going on and leave the person or the persons who are violating the rules basically on the sideline, and basically say, going forward, we want to know what the science is. We want to know what the rules are. We want to know why it's 6 versus 10, all those things. If they want to come in and talk about rules and everything like that, then that's one thing. Even though they had a chance to come in the very beginning, and they had open forums throughout the rulemaking process to voice their opinions. Be that as it may, we're all busy, we're all lazy, we're all have other things going on, and basically, there are reasons, not to do things, not to get active. But if you want to come in now and say, hey, this is our opportunity to have a seat at the table and to go over things and have a better understanding, then I would have a little bit more, respect than just to say, hey, Paco's a brother of ours, and therefore we need to protect him. And I understand what you're saying about unions. It's kind of the way of the world, and that's the strength in the numbers. But this is the wrong person, in my opinion, to pin your hopes and dreams upon, as far as why HISA or any rulemaking body, for that matter, should be removed or things should be changed.
Yeah, and again, I'm going to say it for a third time. This was not an isolated incident. This is a guy who has put other riders in danger for years and years and years, and smacked the horse across the face in anger for the entire world to see. Do not leave that context out. If you're going to defend Paco Lopez, you got to acknowledge the context and the history of this particular rider and why this happened. You can't pretend this is an isolated incident. And also, like I said, this was not the 6-strike rule. This was him, and we've seen it, and it looks terrible. Him smacking the shit out of these horses, raising his hand that high and just pounding them. I don't care if you think that it doesn't hurt the horse. It is a horrible look. And every other jockey in America, including all the top riders, have learned not to do that. And they still win race after race in grade 1 after grade 1. There is zero reason that Paco Lopez can't learn to abide by those same rules, except for the fact that he is a habitual line stepper, in the words of Dave Chappelle, and he does whatever he wants. It doesn't matter what's looming over him in terms of a suspension or probation or anything. He just cannot abide by the rules. He's proven it time and time again. And I don't want to hear that this is an egregious penalty considering his history. It's just completely farcical.